How's it going, producer? Thales here, and today we're gonna talk a little bit about sound design. One of my favorite techniques to get my synthesizers, guitars, vocals, and drums to sound not only unique but also thicker and fuller is having multiple layers of each of them. But don't get me wrong, it's not multiple layers of the same sound, because that would only make them sound louder instead of changing the quality and texture of the sound, making it fuller and wider. To properly thicken the timbre of your sounds, you need to have different audio recordings or samples happening at the same time, and if they blend together, they will supplement each other. You know, when you're listening to your favorite pop songs and during the chorus the vocals grow, there's like this wall of vocals? Well, it may sound like it's just one take, one recording, but most times it's many layers of vocals in sync and panned all over the place. Usually in pop music production, the singer records the song over and over again, so the producer has multiple choices of takes to use as layers, especially during sections of the song that deserve the extra energy, like the choruses. That's called natural doubling, but this can also be done artificially with just one vocal recording, and that's another technique called artificial doubling, which has a similar effect, but it's an entirely different process, so we'll have another video just for that subject. For now, we'll just focus on layering, and I want to show you some examples in my latest release. So this is the project in Ableton Live. This one is called Maybe We'd Be Together. You can listen to the entire song by clicking on the card that should be somewhere on your screen right now. And first I want to show you my bass. On the right side of the screen, notice there is a bass group with 3 different bass tracks in this group. The first one is bass, then bass top, then sub. They're all MIDI tracks with the exact same MIDI clips. Each one of these tracks is what I call a layer. Here's how they sound together. Now, if we listen to each track separately, you'll hear what each layer brings to the table. The first one. This layer is the core sound of my bass. The 2 other layers will supplement it to make it richer and fill a certain part of the frequency spectrum that I felt was missing on this sound, which is, by the way, an Ableton preset. Let's hear the second layer. Now this layer is just an extra distorted sound that was placed in the background, and it wouldn't work by itself. It's kind of thin by itself, especially because I'm filtering some unwanted frequencies with this equalizer. In this case, I don't need the low frequencies coming from this layer and possibly causing the sounds to clash with the first one. What I wanted from this instrument was that thin distorted sound to place on top of the first layer and give it some character. And the third layer is a sub bass. It's just a sine wave made with Ableton's operator, and the purpose is to provide those super low frequencies that make the room shake. You can only hear this if you have good headphones or speakers. The frequencies here go as low as 35 Hz. For people that will listen to the song on their cell phones or laptops, this won't make a difference. They won't even hear this layer. But if the song didn't have this low frequency foundation, it would sound very weak in a club environment, in a car with a good sound system, or even in headphones. One more time, here's the full bass sound with all layers. By the way, the bass is not the only instrument in this song that has some layering. Let me show you my snare drums. Here's the full sound. The snare was made of 2 samples, which I call top snare and bottom snare. Here's the top snare. Here's the bottom snare. One more time, the combination of both layers. Sounds a lot fuller and punchier, right? Also, it's a unique snare. If you use sample packs and you don't change or layer them in any way, many people will be using the same sounds as you. But if you layer your samples and you mix and match, you're immediately coming up with something that no one's ever used before. You designed your own snare sound or bass sound or anything really. In this song, I also layered 2 vocal tracks on the chorus. It's usually more than just 2, but in this song, I felt like the arrangement was already busy enough. There was no need for more layers. So listen to the isolated vocals on the chorus.
Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together.
Could you tell that was more than just one take going on? Here's the main vocal take with just some delays and reverb.
Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together.
And here's the extra vocal layer with some of that artificial doubling effect that I mentioned before.
Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together.
Again, the 2 layers together sounded like this.
Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together.
This technique just gave the vocals more body, so it could stand out in a busy arrangement instead of just getting masked by the synthesizers and everything else that was going on. Here's the whole arrangement.
Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together. Maybe we'll be together. Maybe you will be mine.
Layering, isn't that cool how you can use more than one sound at a time to get that timbre you actually want? Pop songs on the top of the charts sometimes have dozens of vocal layers on the chorus. Rock bands do this all the time with their guitars. Usually they have a guitar recording in the center, a different recording panned right, and another panned left, for example. EDM producers layer tons of saw wave synthesizers and space them apart by detuning and delaying them slightly. There's 1,000 different ways you can use this concept. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you learned something and want to learn more in the next videos. Now it's your turn to layer some great sounds. I'm Thales, and I'll see you later.